Hi, everybody. I'm George, and this is the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest, at least. And today's guest is a hilarious comedian who you might know from The Birthday Boys, a great musician who you might know from The Sloppy Boys, a writer, director, producer. Heck, if you've got a hat, he's wearing it. Jefferson Dutton is here. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, George, you make me blush over Zoom. Hey, you don't sound like you're from Philly.
So I actually grew up in North Jersey, but, just kind of generic accent, I suppose.
Yeah, East Coast.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, we're thrilled to have you here. We actually had Tim on as well to talk about Jaws.
I saw that. That's
movie,
cool. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into horror?
Well, I was a scared kid. I think, yeah. And I think it probably has contributed to my more lasting appreciation of horror that I was a little, I didn't get it as a kid, you know? Mm-hmm. I actually, as a kid, I saw, and I had a much better tolerance for like sci-fi horror-y type stuff. Like even a little bit too young, I maybe saw like Alien and The Thing. And
those will do it.
Yeah, like those are like very scary movies, but those didn't scare me as much as like a slasher thing or like a demon-y exorcist type thing. Like for whatever reason, maybe it's because I was raised Catholic. I was scared of witchy shit, demon shit. And now, I mean,
felt too real.
It kind of, yeah, honestly, I don't know. I think so. But like, I remember watching The Fly as a kid.
Oh my God, you're really picking the top scary ones.
Well, like I looked at the list that you had, and like you've had a lot of good guests, and you've talked about a lot of good movies. But I remember seeing The Fly and being like, "This is fucking awesome. It's scary, but like I feel like I'm part of it or whatever." And then we get to the maggot birth, and man, I wanted to puke. I remember being a kid and being like sick to my stomach watching it. But anyway, I didn't see any Freddy or Jasons until I lived in LA. I might have like seen one, but Hanford and I made a point to like watch all the Fridays a couple of years ago.
Oh, nice.
So it's been an evolving thing, me and horror.
Very cool. Did you find that because it was a little more campy and everything, you were able to kind of come to it and be like, oh, this is, it's a slasher, but we're so far removed from that feeling realistic at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, especially the Fridays, because they're so like they're the first one, or I think like maybe technically, don't at me, everybody. I'm sure like Halloween was the first one, and then we get into the Fridays, but they're so just like literally a group of teens go to the woods and they're picked off one by one.
Yeah.
There's no twist. There's no take. It's not Cabin in the Woods, Final Girls, or anything like that. It's like, this is laying the groundwork. That's why they did a fucking million of them. And that's why we can now do a take on that stuff.
Exactly. I always love hearing from people who work in comedy and are also into horror because of the relationship that they share with the audience in terms of like setup, payoff. They're
George,
so integral.
You're getting into it, baby.
I sure am.
Yes.
Is your experience with comedy that you find bleeds over into how you react to horror?
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons, like, if I ever get a chance to like really pitch a horror thing, I will say this exact shit that you're saying, which is like, it's true. I read in an interview with Jordan Peele. I might be like repeating what he's saying word for word, but both comedy and horror seek a very specific and extreme reaction from the audience. And how they go about it is just a really, really careful control of tension and release.
Yeah.
And it's just like, they're exactly the same how you would go about it. It's just that one, you're trying to get a laugh, and one, you're trying to get a scare. And they're both like laughing and a scream. That's some real lizard brain shit. You know what I mean? Like they're both like subconscious reactions you're trying to get out of people. Strong animal lizard brain shit.
Sure. I mean, fear is literally it's tapping into as primal of an emotion as you can possibly get, really. Mm-hmm. So when I went to reach out to you, I read that you were working on a paranormal thriller, which I would love to hear about if you're comfortable with that.
Too soon, George. Too soon.
Fair enough. But I also am curious if that's a subgenre that you find yourself gravitating towards, or if that just happened to be where inspiration struck.
Yeah. I mean, I love comedy and my comedy boys, and I hope I get to do it for forever. But growing up, I wasn't like, I want to be a comedy writer. Like Tim Kalpakis memorized like SNL scripts and knows everything about every sketch and was always in the room being like, like SCTV kind of did this. And he'd be like, what? SCTV kind of did this? And like, he knows all that stuff like the back of his hand. He's like really encyclopedic about comedy history. And I'm not that way. I've got far-flung interests, and Mitch and I were kind of the horror people. Actually, Chris too, but my interests are definitely not limited to comedy. I hope I get to do some thrillery stuff. I love the Jordan Peele trajectory. I would love to do something like that.
That's awesome. And hey, I hope that for you too, because I think that people who do cross over from one genre to another are able to sort of utilize tricks from all over the map in a way that helps to elevate all aspects of it. Sort of the sum is greater than the parts.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Well, let me ask you this, George. I mean, because I have mixed feelings about comedy horror movies or like horror comedies. They don't always work for me.
No, definitely not.
And Re-Animator really does. I remember seeing Evil Dead 2 in high school as a young male with a driver's license, and it really scaring me. And people would always be like, oh, those are the best like horror comedies and stuff. And as I got into college and watched Evil Dead 1, 2, and then Army of Darkness, they get kind of like funnier as they go.
Right.
But none of them strike the balance that Re-Animator has. Re-Animator just feels like a smarter comedy. Like they're both campy, I guess. I don't even know if I'm using that word right.
No, I think you're right. And I think that it's interesting because to me, Re-Animator kind of feels like a scary movie that happens to be written by some funny people. Yeah. And that humor just kind of leaks in. Whereas something like The Evil Dead 2, they were like, we're going to make a horror comedy. This is we're going to try and find this balance. And sometimes in seeking out that balance, you wind up tipping it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And when it's a more natural evolution of the script, like I feel like it is in Re-Animator, it comes through in a more subtle way that it's not hitting you over the head with the comedy and being like, do you get it? We're funny too. It just happens to be funny. It's
such a strange thing because I think the comedy might be over some people's heads with Re-Animator in a way that it couldn't be with Evil Dead, because they're, Evil Dead, they're literally doing like Looney Tune shit with like the possessed hand. Yeah, it's like full on slapstick. Whereas in Re-Animator, there's just this sort of like constant creeping like lunacy to like, why do they keep doing this? This is the most ill-advised thing they keep doing. They're like, it wasn't quite fresh enough.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The fact that they keep a straight face through it all as well really helps with it. There's a lot of the Evil Dead where, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead 2.
Me too.
When there are times when they're basically looking at the camera and winking and being like, hey, this is fun, right?
Isn't it dumb how we're doing this?
Yeah. And I don't ever get that feeling with Re-Animator. I feel like the humor, like you say, is in the bafflement of being like, how are you getting to this point? How are you letting it get this out of control?
And it's like, it's really dry in a way. Like, Airplane is goofy, but I guess it reminds me of like Leslie Nielsen specifically in Airplane, or like that sort of. There's the cold open of Re-Animator. They're in like, what is it, Switzerland, Germany, and Herbert West's mentor has been reanimated, we assume. Yeah. And he's like convulsing and his eyes explode and he collapses. And the other doctors are like, oh my God. And they check his pulse. And it's like
his head was literally pulsating. He's done, guys.
The dude's like eyes just swelled up and exploded, and he screamed and fell. And to check his pulse, I was like, if you don't think something's up by that point. But in the world of what's happening, in the world of the characters, it's scary stuff. I don't know. They walk this really weird line where it feels like Lebowski or something. Just this weird, you have to kind of be clued into why it's funny, which isn't going to work for as many people as the slapstick Evil Dead stuff, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not going to beat around the bush anymore. We've been talking about it already this whole time. But to introduce the movie, we're talking about 1985's Re-Animator from Stuart Gordon. As a little peek behind the curtain for the audience out there, this is genuinely one of my personal favorite horror movies.
Yes.
And it's based on the 1922 H.P. Lovecraft novelette Herbert West Re-Animator, which led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole of the distinction between book types. No one will care about this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go for it.
Turns out there's flash fiction, which is under 1,000 words, then short stories between 1,000 and 7,500 words, then novelettes, which go up to 17,500 words, and anything between that and 40,000 is a novella before eventually becoming a novel over that. So now we all know this fact that will never, ever come up in anyone's life.
That's cool. So what's Re-Animator?
Re-Animator is a novelette. So it is between 7,500 and 17,500 words. So,
right. Have you read it?
I have not. So I was going to, and then everything that Stuart Gordon was saying is like, yeah, we took it, but really it's more like Frankenstein, and we just kind of like took the bones of Re-Animator and applied it to it. So I was like, I don't need to read it. I got enough stuff to do.
Yeah, I got like a big ass Lovecraft book, and it's not great, or it's not for me. I didn't like plow through it. Also, it's like as thick. It's as thick as like two Bibles next to each other. It's gigantic, but it is good because they're all super short. And I did get to Re-Animator because it was towards the beginning, and I was like, well, I'm at least going to read that.
Yeah, and
it is it's pretty much the same. The thing about the story, what did we call it? A novella?
No, novelette.
The thing about the novelette is that it takes place over like years and years. And like they'll have an episode, and then the reanimated thing will like escape into the night, and then it'll be like 5 years later, Herbert West and I like hadn't talked in a while, and he hit me up again, and the thing was back. It's like it's kind of got this weird long-term dread aspect to it. Also some light racism, or not even light.
That's HP for you.
Yeah, that is HP. I don't know. I'd say if you can like find a PDF of it online, check it out.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. What I thought was interesting about this movie is that it did go through a lot of transitions. It was originally devised by Gordon as a stage production with his longtime compatriot and screenplay/stage play writer Dennis Paoli, and then a half-hour TV pilot, and then 13 episodes at an hour each, and then finally the movie that we know and love. And the idea came about because Gordon was like complaining to his friends about the amount of vampire movies, which relatable.
Yeah, to this day.
Yeah. And he said, where's my damn Frankenstein movies? And then somebody asked if he had read the novelette. I assume because of those similarities to Frankenstein, where it is sort of like the monster goes off into the night, and then the Dr. Frankenstein is sort of like on the hunt for him all these years. Mm-hmm. So that's probably where the parallel was for them.
There was a theater in LA that doesn't exist anymore called the Steve Allen Theater, named for the late night host. Or it was also called the Center for Inquiry. And the whole point of it was that it was like an atheist's church or like library or meeting space, I think. Mm-hmm. And there was like a lot of Houdini shit in there, and there was a lot of like esoteric kind of cool stuff. But they had a theater where they would do a lot of comedy shows. And I remember seeing that they did Re-Animator the musical or Re-Animator Live. And it was Stuart Gordon. I don't know if I'd seen the movie at that point, and I was like, oh, Re-Animator, like the movie, that's cool. And then after I'd seen the movie, I found out that the guy, Stuart Gordon himself, had done it. And I was so bummed that I had missed it. But that's funny that I didn't know it was originally conceived like that.
Yeah, he actually was a huge stage guy first and foremost. He worked in Chicago a lot. And he worked with a lot of the same actors in like a troupe, basically. And that kind of bled into his movie career as well, where he sort of brought back a lot of the same actors because you develop that relationship, and you're like, I know what these people can bring. I know what they can adapt to the roles and everything. So I feel like there is a lot of his stage time influence that sort of bleeds into it. So the musical, I wish that I could check it out. I literally reached out to the music composer to be like, hey man, what's up with this no soundtrack? There's nothing out there. And he was like, we're trying, we have a great cast recording done, and it just hasn't been put out all these years later. We want it to go out, and it just hasn't been put out. And so I am here to say, whoever has the rights to the Re-Animator the musical cast recording, please put it out.
Let's get it out there. Man, that's cool.
Unfortunately for Stuart Gordon, he did not have a giant H.P. Lovecraft compendium, and the Herbert West Re-Animator novelette was long out of print by the time that they were looking for it, and so he had to go to the Chicago Public Library to read their copy. And
wow,
yeah, they had it like tucked away in their like older books section, and he did love it, but he realized that it would be like way too expensive to recreate turn of the 20th century America, and so they updated it to be modern Chicago.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. By the time it had become the TV show, however, Bob Greenberg, who was a special effects guy, had really been hammering it home to Gordon that the only market for horror was in feature films. At the time, they were like, this is not going to go anywhere if you have it as a TV show. And so he introduced him to Brian Usna, who was a pretty new producer at the time, but they wound up working together for a very long time. And Usna liked the script. He convinced Gordon to film in Hollywood because of the focus on special effects, and he made a distribution deal with the famous Charles Band and his company Empire Pictures in return for post-production services. So really like a who's who coming together of big names, even if they weren't big names at the time. So to me, it's really not that much of a surprise that this wound up being so great.
Yeah, of Usna's stuff, I watched Society this year.
Wow.
Have you seen that?
Movie. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I thought it was like kind of bad, except for like really worth the price of admission for the effects.
The shunting.
Which oh, yes. Which I think were that guy Screamin' Mad George.
Yeah.
That
He's
VFX
great.
dude, yeah, like some of the most like absurd body horror shit. But I remember seeing Usna and was like, I know that name. Where do I know that from? But have you? I don't want to jump ahead.
Sure.
Have you seen? I haven't seen any of the sequels.
I have seen all of them. I saw Beyond Re-Animator and Bride of Re-Animator, and they're fine. I mean, They're not as good as Re-Animator, but I would say that if you really like this movie, there's enough in there that you could get out of them to enjoy.
Great.
I think that you would probably like it better than Society. Say.
I'm sure I would hope so. It would have to be the bar's low. Next question. Have you seen From Beyond?
I have. I like that movie too.
Let's not get too into it because that's going to be something hopefully somebody will pick someday.
Sure.
But shares a lot of the same DNA, right? That's
absolutely.
Also Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah, also based on H.P. Lovecraft work.
Also Lovecraft. So.
Yeah.
And then one last spiritual sequel or whatever. I watched Frighteners last night. Have you seen The Frighteners?
That's the one I haven't seen.
George, I gotcha, baby. Okay. That is just another, that's where I first saw Jeffrey Combs, and I thought that he was Jim Carrey for the first 10 minutes.
Wow.
He's as twitchy and crazy as he is in Re-Animator. He's like, it's like exponentially
dialed
crazier
up.
in
Wow.
Frighteners. But Frighteners is like a, I want to say 96 Peter Jackson movie that Michael J. Fox is in. It's great.
Who says no to that? I mean, it's on my list. There's so many movies out there.
Yeah. Check it out, folks. You got time. It's
That's right. Yeah, we're all in lockdown, so you might as well.
Okay, back to Re-Animator.
But Usna was right to make this move to Hollywood because the effects are a huge part of this movie. I mean, as fun as the performances and everything are, this is like a splatter fest. It's got all kinds of fun goop and gore and everything in it. And, John Nolan did the makeup effects and just so great. He got all kinds of gross photos from the Cook County morgue, and he used a forensic pathology book to accurately capture the way that blood settles in a corpse and creates all the skin tones and everything. And when I was looking through the credits, it said the special thanks to Dr. Daniel Del Baccio, MD, from the pathology department at Henrotten Hospital, and Dr. Robert Stein, MD, at Cook County morgue. So thanks to them for the movie looking so good.
Oh man, that's so funny that they went through all that, but then you do still have there were several shots where who's the Dr. Hill?
Yeah.
You can tell that they couldn't decapitate an actor or they couldn't green screen out anything. So the frame would be just under his chin. And there's a lot of sort of just clever framing and stuff like that. It does work. It's just funny that there are insane visual effects going on, but then there are just cheap and easy high school movie techniques too.
That's part of what I love about it, though, is that it really feels like they're just throwing everything at the screen, making it work, pulling it together by the seat of their pants, and I love it. I think that all the silly like head stuff makes me laugh so much.
When his head is in the dish, and the body goes and grabs fresh bags of blood and just like squirts them in the dish, and the head is like, like he needs fresh blood. He can breathe and talk, but he needs
right. Gotta keep him lubricated in there.
It's like, okay, yes, sure.
I was reading that like because he was stuck in that tray in there, he couldn't like move around. And David Gale, who plays Dr. Hill, was a smoker, and he was like stuck in there for like 7 hours. And so Jeffrey Combs had to like come over and just like feed him cigarettes.
Oh my God.
He was stuck in there. So good shout out to Jeff Combs putting in the work, though, you know?
That's so funny. I would love to see photos of that. Oh man. And like, you know, if his head is through the dish, because they had a good looking dish and the dish has water in it, like there's no way that there's not like blood just trickling down that guy's neck and he's stuck under that fucking table for hours as they get these shots. Man, I really appreciate how down and dirty it is, you know?
It really is. And, you know, put the emphasis on dirty because Nolan said that Re-Animator is the bloodiest film he's ever worked on. Previous to this, he had never used more than 2 gallons of blood. This used 24 gallons.
That's funny because, like, yeah, it's bloody, but is it that bloody? I feel like I've seen bloodier.
I've definitely seen bloodier, but it's just funny that like people are just like coated like on their mouths and everything. They're just constantly leaking blood out of orifices.
That's true.
So it's not always as like explosive in terms of gore. But you also do like when they pitch things at the wall, like they pitch things at the wall like 5 times in this movie.
Yeah. And like frequently it leaves behind like a little gob of brain or whatever, like the cat.
Oh man, that look. It's funny because I just watched the movie Elves and wouldn't recommend it. I watched it because it was supposed to be one of those like so bad it's good movies, and I certainly laughed a few times at it. But
I've never even heard of this. Keep going.
The guy who played Grizzly Adams was in it. So, but basically, there's a cat death in it, and it really sort of put the Re-Animator one in perspective where I had a really hard time watching the cat death in Elves because like they'll just like shove it in a bag and they put it in the toilet and drown it. And like you see it like struggling in there.
Yeah.
And it feels so much more uncomfortable to me than like,
you know
this
what?
Crazy cat attacking them and then getting like just hurled at the wall.
You're fucking right. There's something about a bag death that is scary. And like, I think it's because it kind of hides the pain and you have to imagine it. But also, Mandy comes to mind. Also, there's a Friday. There's a Jason movie where somebody gets like not set on fire in a sleeping bag, but maybe like maybe batted against a tree while in a sleeping bag.
It's in 7, but they like cut a huge part of it, and so in Jason X, the last one, they do the recreation of it, and the like 2 hologram girls are like, we love having premarital sex.
Yes. Man, I mean that's funny, but fuck Jason X, it was so bad.
Look, I it's certainly not nearly as good as some of the other ones, but I don't hate it. The frozen nitrogen kill, pretty fun when he smashes them.
All right. I guess like I don't like that look of those Dimension films. Like there's this rash
that I can get behind. Yeah.
of that like blue white light with like the fakey like giant fan, that industrial like that's in like every Dimension Studios movie. Anyway.
No, certainly the aesthetic is not my favorite, but there are a few kills in it that I'll support. But the most difficulty in terms of special effects for this movie came from the headless zombie that you mentioned earlier, where and it's not like it's in an insignificant portion of the movie. And
no,
Tony Dublin designed the mechanical effects for Dr. Hill, but he had to literally in every scene he had to use a different a technique because you can't just remove the 10 inches of head because it throws off all the proportions and everything when you haven't actually removed anything. So this included stuff like doing the classic Halloween costume move where you build like the upper torso and you have David Gale like bend over and stick his head through. Just really funny, like you said, down and dirty kind of stuff where they're just like, make it work, get his head out there. Mm-hmm. And I love that. Took 6 weeks to shoot after starting at the end of November of 84, and one of those post-production services that Charles Band had promised them was composing the score, so he looped in his brother Richard Band to take care of it. Re-Animator's score is pretty well known because Band adapted the Bernard Herrmann score for Psycho to create it, and he used that as a base, and he changes up the theme while deliberately trying to maintain that Herrmann vibe. And I'm curious, as a musician, if the score is something that stands out to you.
Yeah, I remember Mitch was bagging on me. He was like, "You don't know the score from Re-Animator?" And I was like, I guess I don't know. And then when I watched it recently, I was like, you know what it did was it reminded me of Busta Rhymes' "Give Me Some More," which samples Psycho. Yeah. And then because it's got the but then also it reminds me of Mars, the planets. Are you familiar with the planets?
No.
So there's like this classical music, a set of songs. I don't know what the word for it would be, but there's a song for each of the planets.
A suite.
A suite. And Mars is the one that you definitely know. It's like dun 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 dun. You've heard it like, and everything kind of does it, like Terminator 2 kind of sounds like that, but there's a little bit of that in Re-Animator 2. But it's great. It plays throughout the whole open of the movie. Yeah. Good job, that guy. I can't believe he didn't get sued or whatever like Pharrell.
Yeah, it's funny too because everyone was like even at the time, people were like, "This is just the Psycho score," and there were critics who literally like, "This movie rules, but I have to take off like half a star because they're just using this, like they're blatantly ripping off Psycho."
Sure. So. But also it's funny that people weren't very litigious back then, or it seemed like there were just kind of like handshake deals for like every movie made so much compared to the budget back then that was like, nobody's going to go to court over this shit.
Plus, I mean, if you're going to steal a score, you might as well go to the granddaddy, go with Psycho.
True.
It's a great damn score. So, but eventually the movie finally released on October 18th, 1985 in 129 theaters. Now, I know this whole section of the episode is contextual information, but to give a little context to this context, both the multiplex and saturation booking were on the rise in a feedback loop until it eventually bloated into megaplexes. But this kind of landed right in the time, and 129 theaters is like nothing. You know, from 1970 to 1975, AMC Theaters, which is still one of the biggest chains, but, this was one of the basically founders of the multiplex theater. They added 43 multiplexes with more auditoriums and less capacity. And then this ballooned to 10% of the 16,712 indoor movie theaters in 1981, having more than one screen. And in the rest of the first half of the 1980s, the multiplex became the norm, and single auditorium theaters just ceased to be built, pretty much.
Yeah.
And as the multiplex took hold, this cemented the transition away from roadshow-style screenings to wide releases of movies, which had already begun. In 1959, Hercules started playing in 600 theaters. So even back then, when saturation booking was just starting, they were already in way more than that. But the December previous, in 1984, saw Beverly Hills Cop as the first movie playing on more than 2,000 screens at once. So just to give you an idea of what 129 theaters means for a release, things were certainly playing all over the world and the U.S., much more than this. So it had a very small audience, but the fact that it was able to build, and develop this following that it has, I think really speaks to the quality of it.
Yeah, and wasn't it rated X when it first came out?
Yeah, they just didn't go to the MPAA. And so it basically had the equivalent of an X. And so theaters weren't interested in it, and, rental places weren't interested in it. They basically were like, look, we're going to make it do with this, but when it came time to go into like rental spaces, they did wind up making an R-rated cut that had to use a lot of different material. The Well, so all right. So before I get to that, though, just to talk about the budget for 1 second, it had
Sure.
a $900 million budget. It made almost 2/3 of that back on opening weekend before.
Sorry, 900,000.
Yes, excuse me. 900 million. That would be a very different movie. $900,000 budget, making back almost 2/3 of that on opening weekend before going on to make $2 million at the U.S. box office. So it made money. Good for them.
Yeah, still modest.
Yeah,
I kind of expect. I mean, obviously over time, and all the Hot Topic T-shirts, it's made more than that. But
yes, over the years certainly. But on its release, that was all it made, and because they were looking to make more money back, because it was such a modest opening or modest run, they had to hit the editing bay in order to allow for a home release, because most stores wouldn't carry anything that was unrated or anything. And so the R-rated version runs 93 minutes and has a lot of the gore edited out and replaced with various scenes that had been deleted for pacing purposes, including a subplot with Dr. Hill hypnotizing several of the characters, and a short scene that showed Herbert West injecting small amounts of the reagent to stay awake and energized. And I think that's a really interesting scene to not have in the theatrical run, because, of course, injecting himself with the reagent seems like it would have unintended effects, driving him nuts and explaining the erratic behavior. So, the movie clips along real nice without these scenes, but when I watched the extended stuff, I was just like, man, a lot of this stuff is really interesting and sort of fleshes out the character decisions and everything. So.
Yeah. Hey, that's okay. That's how it works. Oh, gotcha.
Sure.
Gotcha. I'm a little unclear on how he was able to mentally control the dead at the end.
Yeah.
There's that thing where he's like his sort of coup de grace is that he kind of can summon everybody in the morgue to attack our heroes.
Right.
And I was like, by then it's just fun and fine and whatever. but they did a really good job of nailing down the rules up to those points.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And even with that, you noticed that this just kind of happens out of nowhere, but
right.
There are all these little scenes that got cut out that show him sort of hypnotizing people who are alive, and there are still sort of remnants of it where he looks deep into people's eyes, and Herbert is here's my notebook. I don't know why I'm
yeah, you're right.
You.
Also, what's his fucking deal with
the location of Will in the brain and everything?
Yeah, Hill's always burning into people's skulls. He's
that's his thing.
Fire drilling into people's skulls and then taking a Q-tip and getting some liquid out of it. Which, by the way,
he's just checking it out.
I love that stuff. I got no problem with that. The Q-tip going in the first time is so funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But that there's psychic powers afoot too is huh?
Just never discussed. They're just yeah, it's there. Deal with it.
Okay. I wonder though, because whenever I try and write something that's a little mystical or a little paranormal, there is that weird thing where, unlike comedy, keeping stuff from the audience is engaging. Mm-hmm. Where in a thriller you kind of don't want to know what's going on, and you want the audience to kind of lean in to put together the pieces. Oh my god, Game of Thrones is so good at that. They give you just enough to put it together before somebody comes out and actually fucking says it, which is so much later than they've given you the pieces. The first time anyone saw Star Wars, now we all know what a Jedi can do or whatever, but the first time people saw Star Wars, were they just okay, now he can do this?
Those were the droids they were looking for.
Yeah,
actually.
the mind trick is that's convenient. There's a bunch of stuff where if you don't know what Star Wars is and what Jedi are, does it frustrate you how the abilities kind of come to light? Or is that well played enough where it's okay, that makes sense? I don't really know the answer to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on how much goodwill you've built with the audience up to that point. If you've created a movie where they're I'm along for the ride, then they're willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, I guess. But if someone's already frustrated with the movie and they feel even up to that point you're just playing fast and loose with the rules, then you're just oh, sure, you can do this now. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that about so many new blockbusters. We're just okay, I guess, if you fucking say so. Every Transformer-y, Ninja Turtle-y, Marvel-y thing has like some element of that.
Yeah.
But
They unleash their power that they had hidden the whole time.
Yeah.
I agree, frankly.
But reanimate. Give me Re-Animator with a guy putting a Q-tip in the hole in somebody's forehead.
That's all we're asking for.
I'll forgive that a lot faster than I will something that costs like $500 million to make.
Oh, yeah. And what's interesting to me as well, though, about all the different versions of this movie is that director Stuart Gordon has expressed his preference for the unrated version over the R-rated version, even though that does have some of the more backstory stuff. But as of 2013, there now exists the integral cut, which has both merged, coming in at a whopping 105 minutes compared to...
Where do I find that?
It's on a 2013 German Blu-ray that or produced in Germany. It's obviously still in English, but
yeah,
so I watched it put together, and I like it. I like having all that stuff, but I kind of agree with Stuart Gordon in that having it move so quickly in the theatrical version, it's just 86 minutes, clips along so nicely. I think that I like that better than the integral cut. And I think that the slowing down of the pacing to explain all that stuff doesn't necessarily work to the movie's benefit.
I remember the first time I saw Re-Animator, I was happy that like this thing fucking moves, and they spend a good amount of time. They do a good job. Like first you think Herbert West is the bad guy, because everything he does is like sketchy and shady, and you're like, I don't know about this guy. And then you get looped into his world.
Yeah.
And then the threat becomes the Dean. And then they play that out for like 15 minutes. And then the Dean, we know what happens to him. And then Hill becomes the bad guy, but not for the reasons you think, because he wants the reagent. He wants the credit for it.
Right.
So there's like all these different shifts and layers in the conflict. And then, of course, the final thing is just like you have an undead Hill who's doing all this crazy shit. And it does just sort of heighten nice and smoothly, and it turns corners nice and smoothly. It really a cruelly efficient movie. I love a 90-minute movie. My God.
Oh, hell yeah. Dude, I see a movie that's over 2 hours and I'm like, ugh.
Get me out of here. They do that intentionally for like the Marvel movies because of international like they do that for the international box office. Like it's more like, I don't know if it's culturally common or like if it's more just financially feasible that like a movie that is 2.5+ hours long plays better internationally. But I feel like every fucking Marvel movie has an extra 20 to 30 minutes towards the middle back that could just be lifted. Like, do we really need to go roundabout to get the glowy thing to come back to do the thing? They could all be movies that I would really like, but they just collapse under their own weight.
Definitely. They bloat like crazy.
And like, more is not better. The only superhero movie where I was like, I hope this never ends was Dark Knight 2, Batman, right. Chris Nolan 2, where we're like, we take care of Joker and then we're still dealing with Two-Face. I was just like, I hope this movie never ends. I'm so happy there's more movie.
You're totally right about how, so many things just feel like they're in there to add that length. My favorite Marvel movie is The Winter Soldier, and it's because it feels the least like a superhero movie to me. It feels like a spy movie that happens to have superheroes in it, as opposed to superheroes going around and being like, we need to get the orb, and then we can put that gem into my Infinity Gauntlet. None of that is in there. It's just these people being like, we need to get to Russia or Germany or whatever and hack this computer. Shit.
Yeah, it's like a superpowered like Tom Clancy movie, like an espionage movie. Yeah.
So I agree is basically what I'm trying to get to.
I'm curious to see what they do with X-Men now that they have X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about something specifically where somebody was like, Daniel Craig should be Magneto. In the new X-Men, like when they incorporate the X-Men. But because the Marvel universe is so based in current day, I don't think that Magneto should be the X-Men villain that gets brought in, because as much as I love him, especially, I think that this might just be because I am a Jewish person, but
let her rip. I want to hear this.
So much of his backstory and what makes him compelling is baked into his being a Holocaust survivor and that being his motivation and everything. And in order for that to still be the case, he would have to be a decrepit old man running around in modern day.
Oh, yeah.
And either that or they would have to change his backstory. And to me, Magneto without that backstory is not Magneto anymore. So I don't know. Although,
You know, the other crazy thing that they never quite reconcile in the comics, and I'm curious to see how they do it in the movies, is that, like, in the Marvel, comic universe, if you get bitten by a radioactive spider, if you get hit by cosmic rays or gamma rays or whatever, it's like, you are a hero you're a superhero and we love you, says the general population. However, if you get your powers just from puberty, if you're a mutant, you are you're abhorred.
Sure, scum. And get out of here, muties.
And I never reconciled, to me coming in, I was just like, they're all superheroes. I don't understand how, and I don't really think they've ever done a good job of justifying why. That's why I kind of think that X-Men was doing pretty good outside of the Marvel universe, even though Fox is mixed bag.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's cool that was in the Marvel universe, that's the only way of getting crazy powers is to be born with them, and that's it. And now that they're being folded in, and it's like, how do you make this distinction between, mutants are the worst, we hate mutants, but we love Tony Stark and we love Captain America. It's like, right. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know either. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out.
I'll say this. I hope they don't make it a Wolverine-centric X-Men. I'd like it.
I agree.
Make Wolverine one of a team, make him old and hairy and squat compared to the rest of your sexy, young, fucking 20-year-old heroes. Yeah. That would be interesting to me if he's not the main dude anymore. I feel like we've had enough Wolverine.
Definitely. Also, haven't done this in a while. Shout out to all my X-Men fans out there.
Yeah, baby.
It used to come up very frequently on the podcast.
Good. Fucking love X-Men. Talking about it all day.
Hell yeah. So shout out to Jeff Dutton as well, who is one of those X-Men fans. But so reception to Re-Animator was positive, even though it didn't make a ton of money. People liked it, with a lot of accolades going to Jeffrey Combs himself as Herbert West.
Yeah.
In addition to stealing the score, he got a lot of comparisons to Anthony Perkins in Psycho. Came up more than once. In my opinion, that's about as high praise as you could possibly get. I think that Anthony Perkins in Psycho might be the best performance in a horror movie for my money.
George, can I disappoint you?
Tell me, you haven't seen Psycho?
I have not seen Psycho.
Oh my God, Jeff, you gotta see Psycho. Man.
I know. I've seen Vertigo. I've seen The Birds. I haven't seen Psycho. I'll do it. I'll watch the Vince Vaughn Psycho.
Oh no. The monkey's paw, one more finger curls on it.
I will watch it. And again, if you're listening, don't at me with your Anthony Perkins shit.
Exactly. He's already fixing it. Don't yell at him about it.
By the time you hear this, I'll have seen it and I've gotten away scot-free, baby.
Re-Animator itself, like you said, went on to get 2 sequels and a musical adaptation, so it did finally get on stage, but there is also an idea from Brian Usna for a Island of Dr. Moreau influenced 4th movie that I would very much like to see, I think.
Cool.
And aside from Re-Animator, and because of, like I said, he found his niche working with this sort of troupe of actors and utilizing Lovecraft as an inspiration, he said that this was very much sort of inspired by Roger Corman doing his adaptations of Poe. And so Gordon, Usna, Combs, and Barbara Crampton as well, who is in this movie, would work together on From Beyond in 86 and Castle Freak in 1995 as well.
Oh, I have to see Castle Freak. That's been on my list for a while. I think it's on Shudder.
It is, and it's very good. It's not as good as Re-Animator, but it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And he also directed an adaptation of Dagon without the crew in 2001. So definitely found his niche in terms of working with Lovecraft material.
Cool. How are you on Cthulhu type stuff? We're talking, Lovecraft material.
Yeah.
I feel like that's his big thing, and I know nothing about Cthulhu.
I think that the old ones stuff is really interesting, but I also think that it's so hard to capture something like that because their whole thing is like you
It would
can't
drive
even
you
describe
mad. Yeah. Like I get the theory of it, but I've never read one.
Right. Yeah. They're not bad. So those are some of the Lovecraft things that I've read, but to me, it's just so hard to do. The Thing, I think, comes the closest.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love The Thing. It's top 10 for sure. And it's Carpenter's best, I'd say. And I feel like they were trying to do In the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, Del Toro was talking about trying to do it. Yeah.
I was sort of like, well, I mean, good
if
luck.
Someone's gonna do it. I guess Del Toro is a good choice.
I mean, we have The Thing, so we kind of don't we already have this? But
exactly,
all right.
exactly. I think The Thing, in my opinion, The Thing still scares me the most.
Oh, it rips! It's so fucking good.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that has to do with because if you asked me to describe the Thing, I would just be like, it's just a puddle of flesh, a mountain of it. Like I can't describe it to you. And so much, like there are recognizable parts of it where you're like, that's a human head, but why is it in the middle of this mountain of meat? And that to me, that just offness, the human twisted, that's the scary thing to me. That's why body horror gets me so much, is when it's adjacent to human.
And like the intelligence of it is just this like ghost that like you can't ever really see in its true form, and it just jumps around and you have to be suspicious of everyone around you. It's so primal. Yeah. And you know that the DP Dean Cundy?
Yeah, that Cundy flair.
Oh, Cundy, he's the man. He shot Jurassic Park.
Yeah, he sure did.
He had an interview sometime where he said that, like, the ending of The Thing is that McCready and Keith David's character are like have like a standoff after the base has been burnt, and they're just like sitting in the freezing snow, staring at each other, and they each suspect that the other's the Thing.
Yeah.
And Cundy says that there is an answer to who is the Thing at the end, because he discussed with Carpenter that all the characters would have a pin light in their eyeball throughout the movie, and that the Thing would never have this. So I don't know if you need to be watching on 4K or whatever, but I guess that even in that last scene, you can see that somebody has a pin light, has like a pin dot glint in their eye, and one does not.
One does not. There you go, folks. Go back and check it out. See what you can see. Two things that I will say jumping off of that is, one, I also recommend listening to the commentary track for The Thing, because, gosh, anytime that John Carpenter and Kurt Russell are hanging out, they just have so much fun together.
Yeah,
and
they should just do another movie.
They should do it. I mean, look. You're both getting up there. You could make something a little less action-y,
Oh, yeah. Carpenter's looking like the fucking Crypt Keeper. But hey, did Carpenter direct that new Santa movie he's in? He should do that.
Yeah, there you go. Christmas Chronicles 3, directed by John Carpenter.
Another like funny, it's not a horror movie, but Big Trouble in Little China is so good.
Oh, so great. And there is sort of that like monster-y stuff that he's still using there. Have you seen The Color Out of Space?
I honestly,
so good.
I've had people be like, kind of poo-poo Mandy and Color Out of Space. And first of all, I think it's funny that those were both released like within the same year, and both were produced by Elijah Wood's company, and both have Nicolas Cage in them. No, but that's fucking awesome. And way to go, Cage. I'm glad Cage owes so much to the federal government that he needs to do like a bunch of B movies. But Color Out of Space, when he has that... Okay, no, there's so much to talk about. When he is mad and when he's yelling at his daughter, and what does he say? He's just like, nothing is fucking anything up. And he like...
The delivery is so funny.
It's just
so
like,
funny.
Good, let Cage just let her rip.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was not prepared for was the merging of the mother and the kid.
My God.
Like, did not know it was that kind of party when that scene happened.
Yeah.
I mean, That is some full on. That's fly maggot birth shit right there.
It really
that
is
true body horror.
It really is. And I mean, there's that movie uses tension so well. From the cutting board scene where you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally, it happens where she chops off the fingers or whatever, and you know that there's something messed up laying on the ground, and they wait so long to show you. I went with my buddy Mason, and we both got just ripped out of our minds, and I paid for the whole seat, but I only used the edge, Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I love in that movie how they talk about there's a pink light that is kind of like emblematic of all the crazy, the meteor shit.
Yeah.
But the way
titular color.
The titular color. But the way that the characters talk about it, they were like, it was all the colors. It was a color I'd never seen before. Like for us, the audience, it's pink. But I love that stuff. Because when I was a kid, I had this idea of like, it hit me like, what would a color that you'd never seen before look like?
Can't even describe it.
You can't even describe it. And I remember when I was a kid, I thought it would be a cross between orange and silver. And then I realized that it wouldn't be a combination. It couldn't be a combination of any colors,
Right, because you could just do that and then be like, look, I've seen it now.
But that's also how people describe UFO stuff.
There you go.
And ghostly stuff. And in whatever, how your mileage may vary on how much you like to buy into UFO stuff, but I've seen some stuff that's very colorful and it's kind of oscillating colors, like a gold light that's then a red light and a flickery. So I really like the sort of mashing up of all that stuff. Oh, similarly, have you seen The Ritual?
I have seen it.
I really like the scene where they're staying overnight in the most haunted house in the forest, and there's like a crazy lightning storm outside, and then there's like one lightning flash that just holds, and it's silent. That feels like this sort of weird mashup between witchcrafty, devilly, culty stuff and kind of classic abduction stuff.
Yeah.
I love when religious stuff becomes sci-fi or vice versa. That coalescence, that juxtaposition, it works so good.
It really does. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to the show. As we leave 2020 in the rear view and head into 2021, I think we've all earned a resolution to treat ourselves. And nothing says treat like Tuckins, the inside-out all-in-one s'more. With a crunchy handmade graham cracker covered in decadent chocolate and wrapped inside a fluffy marshmallow on a stick, it'll be love at first taste. And there's all kinds of great flavors that you can mix and match, including original, cookies and cream, peanut butter cup, and even some rad seasonal flavors. Plus, unlike a regular s'more, Tuckins can easily be roasted indoors or out, over the fireplace, the fire pit, even the stovetop will do the trick. And they stay delicious for up to 3 months in the freezer. So head to Tuckins.com and use the offer code BEST20 to get a whopping 20% off your order, while also letting Tuckins know you heard about them from the Best Little Horror House. That's TUCK-INS.com and BEST20 for 20% off. So make the new year a sweet one with the no mess inside out s'more. And now, back to the show. So, to get into the actual plot of Re-Animator now.
Oh yeah, we haven't gotten to that. Fuck.
At the University of Zurich, the Institute of Medicine in Switzerland, there is some distant crying as cops and us, as an audience, are slowly led to the room where Herbert West is crouched over a convulsing Dr. Hans Gruber, not named after the die-hard villain, just a coincidence, but a fun one. And like you say, Gruber stands back up and his forehead pulses and his eyes explode. And it turns out that he had already died and been brought back to life by Herbert, but that the dosage was too large. And when he's accused of killing Gruber, West retorts, I gave him life. Just, what an opening. I mean, I just love it so much. Like, I think it really kind of is like, this is what you're in for. You're either on board right away or just, cut your losses and get out now.
Yeah, he's the man. He did a great job. I wish he did more stuff. He should be like, Christopher Walken level famous or, recognizable. He still does stuff, right?
Yeah, I think not at the same rate, but I certainly co-sign that he should be in more and more famous.
But not too famous. Not too famous. Don't turn him into Bill Murray like a meme.
No, definitely not. There's a sweet spot in there for you. And I mean, the opening credits kick in. They kick ass all over town, man. These fluorescent medical diagrams and the scores pulsing. And I just think it really, you're like, this is what you're sitting down for. This is exactly what the movie is going to be like. And so West has been expelled, and he arrives at Miskatonic University in Arkham, Massachusetts instead to keep studying. And speaking of Terminator, fun fact, this is the same building as Cyberdyne HQ in T2. Okay. So that's a fun fact. And we meet Dan Kane, who's another medical student played by Bruce Abbott, who's doing chest compressions on a flatlining patient. And the attending doctor is telling them to call the time of death, but Dan refuses to accept it. Some great foreshadowing for his relationship with Herbert and where the story goes. He brings the body to the morgue, and I really like this over-the-shoulder dolly shot that they used to follow him down the hallway there. He's clearly buddy-buddy with the security guard, who muses about the locked doors. Nobody wants in, and ain't nobody getting out. If only you knew, security guard. If only you knew.
Yeah, there's a weird joke later in the movie where he's like goes to jerk off, maybe?
Yeah, he sure does. All right. He's like just reading Boudoir magazine in front of everyone, looks at the page, goes, break time.
Yeah.
Dean Halsey, the dean of the school, startles Dan in the morgue, and he introduces Herbert to him. And another doctor currently doing an autopsy, who is Dr. Hill, played by David Gale. Herbert and Dr. Hill have a strained relationship from the start. Although Herbert would rub anyone the wrong way. I mean, as you say, he is kind of portrayed as this super arrogant, like, dickhead, basically. Like,
yes.
He's constantly correcting people and everything. He's a really interesting protagonist character because he's dislikable.
Yeah, yes. He's a real live wire. He reminds me of Ren from Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, he does. Dan puts up a room for rent notice, and he smooches his fiancée Meg, played by Barbara Crampton. I really like the transition here as well, as their playful no-nos turn to yes, and we cut to the aforementioned house, and they're having sex there. Of course, I would be remiss to not mention the excellent Stop Making Sense poster that Dan has up, which is pulling double duty as a cool poster and a reference to what our friend Dr. Hill eventually becomes. So, when they finish, through the conversation, we discover that she's Dean Halsey's daughter, and I really like the chemistry between Dan and Meg. I think that they're like really silly and goofing around and everything. But when she opens the door to leave, her and a bushieded Dan are shocked by Herbert on the porch, and he's there to take Dan up on the apartment. And as far as character moments go, I feel like this really kind of distills Herbert all the way down, where he observes that he startled them, and Meg goes, "Yes, you did," and he just goes, instead of apologizing.
Yeah, I love the disdain between the two of them, like when and like the relationship between Meg and our main fellow there, where when Herbert is just like, "I'll take it," and she's like, "Don't you think we should think about it?"
She's like slowly shaking her head like, a little bit.
Yeah, giving huge cues, and then but. You know.
He pulls out a fat stack of hundreds, though, and cash rules everything around me, as they say.
What are you going to say?
Later in Dr. Hill's class, Herbert and he butt heads again, and this scalping is wild to watch. This is a great effect. Hill also leers at Megan during a dinner celebrating the new grant for his laser drill. Boy, laser drill. Fun idea. Fun name. Fun thing to say, but I find it really interesting. You kind of alluded to this while we were talking about the context, but the primary conflict is between like two scummy narcissists. But importantly, they do bring in characters that we like, one to be the voice of reason and one to get corrupted. Just really smart character work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to pick your favorite narcissist. It's like any election.
Oh, too true, unfortunately. But Herbert has converted the house's basement into his own personal laboratory. And like you said, Meg, clear disdain for Herbert. She wants him out, and she sneaks into his room to see what he's up to. And she finds Dan's cat, Rufus, dead in Herbert's fridge, and she freaks. And Herbert does manage to explain it away. There's some really great dialogue in here about, what would a note say, Dan? Cat dead, details later?
Yeah. That's like some actual comedy that's like on the page comedy that does get in there sometimes.
Yeah. And West brings back the cat. We don't see it right away, but the Yowls wake up Dan in the middle of the night. In production goofs that nobody besides me gives a crap about, I did notice that the Talking Heads logo on his Stop Making Sense poster vanished. So I don't know if it was just a different poster or what, but it's gone. So Dan goes downstairs. He finds Herbert being attacked by Rufus, and together they kill poor Rufus for a second time. I love the lighting in this scene. There's like the swinging overhead light that is constantly shifting the shadows on them. It's great. I can't help but laugh also, like I said, when Rufus attacks Dan and he just like throws him at the wall. It's like so ridiculous that he just hurls this cat.
Like the fact that Dan is so ready to like pick up a bat and kind of like prowl the basement with West is very funny.
Yeah.
It's like one of the funnier scenes where throughout it's just kind of in the bones. It's like what they're doing is silly. It's like there's not jokes in it. It's just that it's so ridiculous. And then that scene ends in them being like, you don't think it's dead? Huh? Oh, here, I'll show you. And they do it again.
Yeah, it is very funny because it feels so absurd. That's the absurdity is where the comedy lies.
Oh my God, it's great.
The impact against the wall breaks Rufus's spine. And to convince Dan to help him in his experiments, they bring Rufus back one more time, baby. Rufus just can't catch a break.
So funny.
But now he can't move to attack them. And so it's this great, like, horrifying fascination to watch this cat, like, yowling on the table and just clearly in the throes of agony. As Herbert says, birth is always painful. So, you know, it's they balance it really well, where you are kind of like, ugh, it is gross that this dead cat is like writhing around on the table here. But Meg walks in on the experiment and she's horrified. So Dan the next day tries to tell the dean about West's success in reanimating the dead cat. But the dean doesn't believe him. Not only not believing them, but he expels Herbert and effectively expels Dan as well by rescinding his loans. There's also an element of the dean being happy about Megan being involved and also Dan sleeping with her. But this is explored even further in the deleted stuff, where Dr. Hill sort of uses his hypnosis to like imply to the dean over dinner that Dan is no good and he's just using Megan to get this scholarship and advance his career and everything because Dr. Hill is so interested in possessing Megan for himself. Mm-hmm. You know, it is, you do get it still, but like I said, it just has this sort of like more fleshed out element in the expanded cut. So
okay.
Now that they're fucked, like they have no other options. So West and Dan sneak into the morgue to test the reagent on a human subject in an attempt to prove that the reagent works and salvage their career. It looks like it isn't working, but suddenly and frantically, the corpse sits up and yells. And this thing is gross looking. Like I said, it's got blood all over its mouth and everything. This guy is Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double for 17 years.
I was going to say, he's a muscle man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in the book, this is like some of the racial stuff kind of pops up. I think he's like a black boxer, and then they make it's just not handled very well.
Sure, yeah, that sounds right.
But it is funny that the movie does give them just enough justification to keep doing it. Like they literally never had one positive experience using the reagent, but they're like, well, we got expelled, so now we kind of have to, and then like it just. Every step of the way is just like, well, we do have this stuff.
Maybe it'll work out this time. Yeah, it does escalate in a really impressive way that feels natural for them. Dr. Halsey, who comes looking for Dan, is killed when the violent corpse smashes down the door and crushes him under it with some frankly gross sound design. Like that crunch is nasty.
It's a good crunch.
Yeah. And then he bites off his fingers and he hurls him at the wall too. So cat hurled at wall, doctor hurled at wall. West dispatches the corpse with a bone saw entirely through the chest cavity. Looks gross, looks good. It's another bloody scene. The good news is, though, they've got as fresh a corpse as possible to work with now.
Yes, there we go again. It's just like, well, it's fresh. It's as fresh. That's what we've been waiting for.
Right. All we did before was reanimate the instinct. Now this time we can reanimate the consciousness. Like, it's great. It's great writing. And Dr. Halsey is indeed reanimated, but is a zombie as well. And Megan walks in looking for Dan and her dad, and is like hysterical. She just has the worst timing.
Yeah,
like,
Meg's the only one. Meg is like the heart of, it's fun and games kind of for the guys. There's not too much at risk. Mm-hmm. It's traumatizing for Meg.
Yeah, it sure is. Dan is also kind of going through it. He's being led along, but as I said, he is sort of being corrupted by his time with Herbert, and he collapses in shock from seeing Dr. Halsey brought back to life and be so different from the way that he was. I think that they handle that path downward for Dan with such great timing. Like, it always feels realistic for how he's being convinced to go along with everything.
Yes.
So Dr. Halsey, now in zombie form, gets put in a padded observation cell with Dr. Hill in charge. And he elects to lobotomize him for further study in one of the removed scenes. In the this is what I'm saying though, is that like,
yeah,
later when they're just like, oh, he's been lobotomized, that's enough for me. Like, I don't need to see him being like, oh, he's actually dead. I guess I'll lobotomize him.
And we've seen him do the fire drill into the brain enough times.
We get it.
Yeah, I guess it does help justify that, like, why he's sort of like Bub in Day of the Dead, where it's just like, I guess because he's freshly dead, he can be a little bit placated. Mm-hmm. He's not just a killing machine like the cat and the bodybuilder guy. Yeah.
I mean, as wrong as it's gone, still, Herbert was kind of correct in that there is still some of that humanity in there. We see it come hugely into play at the very end, but
just got to be fresh.
Yeah, exactly. But because of this, Dr. Hill goes to West's basement lab, and he attempts to blackmail him into surrendering his reagent and notes, hoping to take credits for the discovery. A few things here. First of all, the music kicks in, and Hill speaks very deliberately, like I said, in a way that is clearly left over from the hypnotism subplot. But it also works back into something that Hill said earlier about how in Europe, Hill's work on the location of the will is plagiarized from West's former teacher. And so this is it's set up even back then that he's going to come and try and steal this. I think that it's a great setup payoff moment where you're confirmed that this isn't just Herbert being shitty about his former teacher's work being, aped or whatever.
Yeah. By the way, I don't like all this disparaging of Herbert. Herbert is a misunderstood genius.
Sure. Certainly he is.
This also reminded me of, I like this move in movies where somebody tries to take credit for the thing. The thing is already dangerous or not without conflict, like The Fly, this happens. The science magazine editor wants the transporter. Mm-hmm. He wants Brundle's transporter. In Jurassic Park, Nedry steals the embryos.
Dodson.
That's a cool, that's like a cool side thing where it's just like there's some human duplicity going on in your sci-fi horror movie. Cool move. Yeah, cool move.
I love that too. Also in the deleted stuff, Hill sort of uses this hypnotism method of his or whatever to suggest that West will be his assistant and that he has to kill Dan.
Sort of an Emperor Vader Luke type thing.
Exactly. It really is. But he demands a demonstration of, quote, his new serum. And so West puts a few drops of it onto the microscope slide with dead cat tissue, and then sneakily grabs a shovel and bludgeons, then decapitates Hill. It looks so good. Not just a really well done effect, but even the camera work here I really like, where the body is laid vertically into the foreground and the head sort of topples backwards. Just really great way to cover up the fact that you have this fake head falling back.
I love that the shovel move where it's clearly just a shovel with a cavity cut out for the actor's neck or whatever.
Yep.
But that's been done in a couple movies. Love it. Good move.
It looks good. It's nice and simple. And he puts puts Head's Hill into a dishpan to work with. And it keeps toppling. This is another comedy moment that really makes me laugh, where the head keeps toppling over. And so he like impales it on a receipt spike, which is just incredible the way that they're balancing this comedy and horror. But they swing back and forth like a pendulum. But also, the NECA toy of Herbert West comes with a little Dr. Hill head in a dish. And let me tell you, it's a perfect recreation because that fucker will not balance. But so West reanimates Dr. Hill's head and body separately. Again, like you said, there's always one reason to keep going. And he's like, oh, I've never tried it separately before where it wouldn't have the ability to attack him, I guess is his thought. And so he does this separately, but it's super creepy to me when he pulls back from the body and the camera cuts to him, and in the background, Hill's eyes are open now on the desk. Really effective way to use that sort of like pay attention to the background thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also like when Herbert is absent-mindedly thwacking the head with the pencil.
It's really fun. He's also, Hill has this raspy voice now from the severed vocal cords too, which is a nice touch that they thought to do that.
Another thing that's just like, yeah, that is realistic. They do make strange choices where you're just like, well, yeah, it would be that way. And then there's just fucking bonkers choices too, and you just have to you just go with it, man.
It's funny too because by doing those things that feel so grounded in reality, where you're like, oh, I guess it would like fuck up his voice to have his throat cut like that.
Yeah,
it kind of helps to put you in a world where you're like, I believe that this other stuff is happening.
Just like, well, I guess we should reanimate the cat again if we like. It does justify all the little things.
It sure does. It sure does. And while West is questioning Dr. Hill's head, his body sneaks up behind him and knocks him unconscious, which is funny, but also you're like, oh shit. The body carries the head back to Dr. Hill's office with West's reagent and notes. And it turns out that in addition to being able to control his own body telepathically, this reanimation has awoken his ability to do it with these lobotomized, reanimated bodies as well.
Okay, I didn't know that there was any telepathy involved. Well, I guess it's because it's not necessary, that the head would talk to the body telepathically or whatever. It's just like, I just kind of felt like, yeah, it's the same organism, whatever. I'm going with that.
Sure. Hey, look, that works too. I mean, I took it as telepathy. It might just be that they're still connected, you know?
Man, I'm a little bummed by this edition of telepathy, to be honest. I kind of feel like you gotta pick one thing to be weird. And I mean, whatever. They didn't ultimately go with it, but it's funny that there are these lingering traces of of this doctor who can control his students. Anyway,
it is weird, especially because they went to the trouble to cut out so much of it that like there's just like the little lingering things where when you're watching it and you don't know about it, you're just like, that's kind of weird, I guess. And
I guess it just works to make him ominous. That's fine.
Yeah, I guess so. And so now that he can control these bodies, he sends Dr. Halsey to kidnap Megan. The corpse of Dr. Halsey hurts Dan in the process. And while being carried to the morgue by her reanimated father, Meg faints. But when she arrives, strap in, folks, Dr. Hill strips her naked, straps her unconscious body to the table, and she regains consciousness as Hill's body places his head between her legs to assault her. Mm-hmm. Apparently, David Gale felt truly terrible about this. He himself used the term spiritually bereft to describe how he felt about that scene. But apparently, that was not enough for Mrs. Gale, who left him after seeing it for the first time at the screening.
No shit.
Yeah. She said, how could you? And she left him.
Oh, that's sad. Because didn't he die?
Sad.
He died like not too long. When did he die? Like,
let's find out the exact date.
I thought he was a character actor that I had seen a bunch, and it turns out that he like died in the 90s or something.
91, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But
I mean, I remember hearing about this scene in American Beauty.
Right, yeah.
And being like, oh, that sounds like not something I want to see. And then when you see it, it's like, it is kind of the ickiest part of the movie, for me anyway. But,
sure. He's also portrayed as such a bad guy this whole time that it doesn't feel particularly out of character for him. You're never like, oh man, I identify with Dr. Hill. He's such a good guy.
Again, it's like theater of the mind. Hearing about it your mind puts together something worse than when you see it. It's like, oh, okay.
Right. Especially because he is luckily interrupted by the arrival of West and Dan. This is known as the giving head scene because he's literally a head.
Good one.
But he is interrupted, and West distracts Dr. Hill with some great zings. This guy is just full of quips. He says, "Who's going to believe a talking head? Got a job at a sideshow."
Very sassy, too. I remember that. Yeah. That's good.
And while he's doing that, Dan frees Megan. But Dr. Hill reveals that he has reanimated and lobotomized several of the corpses from the morgue. All the ones that they had gone through before and been like, these are not suitable for reanimation. And this lobotomization also renders them susceptible to the mind control as Halsey is. But Meg's voice reawakens this protectiveness in her father. Like I said, there is still that trace of humanity in him. And so Megan's voice sort of turns him onto their side, and he helps to fight off the other corpses as Dan and Megan escape. But West is the one who really manages to put an end to things because he injects Dr. Hill's body with a lethal overdose of the reagent, while the corpse of Halsey crushes Hill's head in an extremely satisfying way. But this is, again, where some of that like body horror kind of comes out of nowhere. But Dr. Hill's body like mutates and his organs just like burst out of his body and attack West. And it like he pulls him in with his intestines. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so West, in like a one last ditch effort, he throws his bag full of notes and his reagent, and he screams to Dan, "My notes, save my notes." And Dan and Megan, they're fleeing away, but Dan does grab the notes, and as they're running, one of the reanimated corpses attacks and strangles Megan. Dan chops his dang arm off with a fire axe, and he rushes her to the emergency room to revive her, but it's too late.
Yes.
So, in despair, he injects her with West's reagent, and the scene fades to black, and Megan, apparently revived, can be heard screaming, "Birth is always painful," as Dr. West said.
Ooh. So, it's funny, I forgot about the ending when I rewatched it, and I also forgot that in both of the scenes, these are bookend scenes where, what's the main guy's name?
Dan.
We'll call him Dan.
Something. Yeah. Dr. Dan.
Like in the beginning, Dan is unable to revive a patient, and it's sort of our, like, this is our main character moment where it's like, he cares more than the other doctors. The other doctors are pulling him off this lady, but he won't give up. And then it's tough to see like, nope, that's it. Dan, that's the kind of horror movie we're in. Fuck. And then at the end of the movie, he's got his girlfriend on the same table. And then I thought that like this would be the bookend where she comes alive again. A lot of movies would play it that way. But not Re-Animator, baby. Nope. He's got the reagent ready to rock. And like they even do that thing where the scene fades to black and you see the neon green reagent is just like this little cylinder in black.
Yeah.
That closes down before you hear the scream and the credits roll. And it's just like, man, it's a cool ending.
Yeah.
And now you got me psyched to see 2 and 3, because also we don't know what happens to Herbert. Herbert West. Last we saw, he was like
intestined.
He was being choked by organs, and that's it. Wow.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a really great ending. I love that they do bookend it in that way. It feels like a real moment for Dan, where he could take what he learned from the beginning of sometimes you need to let go, but he has been brought past the tipping point by his association with Herbert. He has this method to bring her back, and he doesn't have the willpower to say no. And so he's gone too far. I think it's really great. It really feels like the whole movie was leading to that point in a very natural way. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, since you mentioned the reagent, that was like glow stick fluid. This movie is the first use of the glow stick liquid on screen. Was it newish at the time? I don't know. I don't actually know that. Probably. Okay. Feels like they would have been using it previously.
Right. Because it is truly neon. Like, I always thought that would be a great Halloween costume. If somebody could dress up as Herbert West, and then like, if you could be somehow drinking a neon drink.
Yeah, that would be cool as hell. Honestly, probably not that difficult. Put on a lab coat, throw on some glasses, make yourself sweaty.
Yeah. You really twitchy?
Yeah.
I noticed in Frighteners that his pupils are dilated, at least towards the back half of the movie and maybe the entire movie. It looks like he is on mushrooms or something. It's wild. Like his eyes are just black.
Hey, maybe that's how he's getting to that level.
Hey, maybe. I love this dude, Jeffrey Combs. My God, I gotta watch more of his stuff. It looks like he's done a bunch of animated voices for like cartoons. I'm talking the Rat King from Ninja Turtles. I'm talking I don't know. Some Scooby-Doo shit, some
hey, good for you. Hey, I'll always get behind Scooby-Doo. Look,
Transformer shit. Yeah.
Maybe I'm depressed because of the pandemic.
You got a million reasons to be.
Yeah. I watched 37 Scooby-Doo movies this year.
No shit. Wait a minute. Animated movies?
Yeah, animated, the live actions. There's a couple puppet ones, Lego ones. Look, man, there's all kinds of Scooby shit, and I've seen just about all of them.
Damn, George. I'm not very well versed with Scoob.
I wasn't until this year, but now if you got a question, trust me.
All right.
I feel like I could at least hazard a guess, but we're not here to talk about Scooby.
No.
We're here to talk about Re-Animator, and now we've reached the part of the show, Jeff, where we sum up for the people at home why this isn't just a good horror movie, but why this is, in fact, the best horror movie ever made. I'm going to let you kick things off. Sum it up for the people at home.
Oh, my God. Well, first of all, this thing is lean and mean. This is an easy thing to find and press play, folks. If you haven't seen it, this is 90 minutes of your day, and you got some amazing visual effects that also have a bit of a DIY thing, so you can kind of see how they did it, why they did it. You got Jeffrey Combs kicking ass. He's an 11 out of 10 in this movie. He's a live wire. You got to see him. What else? Like I said before, you got a lot of different layers of conflict. This thing escalates. It starts, you're scared of this guy. Then you're scared of this guy. Then you're scared of this guy over here. It's lean and mean, worth your time.
Hell, look, to me, this is the best horror movie ever made because it does find that balance. It is funny. It has moments that creep me out. The performances are just spectacular. I, frankly, agree with the comparisons to Anthony Perkins, and people who know me know Tony Perkins don't miss. and so Jeff Combs is just killing it here. I also love the DIY nature of the special effects. Part of what I love about horror is guessing how they did things, how they accomplished stuff. And it's why I love practical effects so much more than I love CGI, because there is no mystery to it in a CGI. You say, they did it with computers, asked and answered.
Right.
And with this, you get to say, oh, he's in the foreground to block the head falling backwards, or they used the shovel with the little piece cut out, or, oh, it's just glow stick fluid. Like,
yeah.
All of that stuff is stuff that I love. I love that you can see the seams of how this movie was made.
And you hit the nail on the head earlier when you were saying, like, they use a different technique depending on what the shot needs to do.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times that requires a bigger budget and a filmmaker who is willing to do what each shot needs to do and not just throw a computer at it. Yeah. Like, James Cameron is really good at using every trick in the book to kind of muddy the trail over like what the technique is.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in, I want to say, Aliens, where Ripley is stuck in like a lab with a face hugger. Is that Aliens?
Yeah. Yep.
And she's like scampering around, and there's a shot where the face hugger, it's like kind of close on the ground, and the face hugger like runs up to like an object and then leaps off of it onto her or towards her.
Yeah.
And in the commentary or whatever, he was just like, this is 3 shots. You can see that we actually reversed this leap. Like it was like forward motion until this point, and then we pulled it with a string, and it's like you have to do all this stuff, and when you cut it together, that's when you get this true sleight of hand where you're just like, I don't know how they did it. It's because they did it 3 different ways in the time it took your brain to be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, I mean, that commitment to doing it right is what helps put this over the top. And the fact that it is under 90 minutes, well, that's just icing on the cake, baby.
Oh my God. So easy. What an easy recommendation. In the days of streaming where you can watch anything in the fucking world, but look, I'm going to watch The Wire. I will do it. But when people say to me like, oh, it really gets good, like just get to the 2nd season. I'm like, 2nd season?
I had to put in that much time to get there. I say this So at some point, I just like, by and large, kind of abandoned TV. I watch a couple of shows here and there, usually comedy stuff like I Think You Should Leave or the Joe Pera Talks With You. Both incredible shows.
You got good taste, man. That's some good shit.
But like, there's just so much stuff out there. And so for something to break into my attention sphere, if someone's like, you got to watch 10 hours of this show in order to get to where it gets good, I'm like, I could watch 5 movies in that time.
Yes. Yes. You know what? I've had a really fucking hard time getting people to watch.
What's that?
Dark.
Oh, that German show?
Yes.
Hey, now's your chance. You stole the virtues.
You can cut this if you want, but
no, go for it.
In a nutshell, I will say it is adult Stranger Things made in Germany. And so it just has this very like cold international film approach to it. Mm-hmm. And it is a low-key time travel show that turns into a very, very high-key time travel show to the point where I had to watch with a group of friends to understand what was going on.
You get that discussion going. That's how you parse things out. Me and my buddies watch Twin Peaks that way. We met every 3 episodes online to be like, all right, what do we think is happening?
Dude, like, yeah, I mean, there are shows that are confusing, and then there's dark. Like it is, it takes that element of television, and like this is just what, like, nobody's gonna watch it hearing this, because this is the most annoying thing about television is that, like, you know, with Game of Thrones, you got to know, like, oh my God, this person is actually this person's cousin, and then that's going to come into play like 2 seasons later.
He was
or whatever.
A bastard the whole time.
it takes that and like fetishizes it. It's like it doubles down on it to the point where you're just like, my fucking brain hurts because I can't keep track of this many families. They all look the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can cut all this.
I wouldn't dream of it. People, go watch Dark.
It's only 3 seasons, but it will hurt your head, and you should watch with a partner.
Hell yeah. And that's it. Great movie. Go watch that show as well. Jeff, I want to thank you so much for coming on this show. I had such a great time talking about Re-Animator with you.
George, I had a blast.
Tell people where they can find you. I mean, I'll even plug some of your stuff. I said this when Tim was on. When you guys came to Philly, literally the most fun I've ever had at a
I'm
concert.
so happy you saw that show. Is Philomoka still up? I mean,
they're going through some issues right now.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, everybody was, and they already were.
Exactly. Yeah, they weren't technically zoned for concerts, which, if you've been to Philomoka, it gets really fucking hot in there, and it's very confined, but it's a really fun venue, and I hope that they manage to get it back open, because you're just so close to, everyone is so packed in there and having such a nice time. And I mean, you guys really left it all on the floor, and I had an absolute blast. So people should definitely check out your band, the Sloppy Boys. Tell them what they can check out, what streaming and everything.
Right. Okay. So the band, the Sloppy Boys, is myself, Tim, and Mike from the Birthday Boys. Look, we didn't know that the Boys was going to be like the whole thing. And there's like so much shit now where it's just like the blank boys. We're sorry. I'm sorry. We named it a long time ago.
Trendsetters.
And so anyway, the Sloppy Boys is the band. We've got 3 records out now. The 3rd one came out this summer. We did 3 records in 3 years. They each came out. They each came out during the summer, and getting this one out was hard because we had lockdown, and then also for a while there, I had a broken rib and a broken foot, and I couldn't drum.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but it came out against all odds. And then...
And it's great.
That one's called Paradiso, the new one, which is coming out on cassette very soon, like within days. And then we've just recently launched a podcast. The band has launched a podcast, and it's not really about music. It's about cocktails. It's also called The Sloppy Boys. And we're going down the list of cocktails that are recognized by the International Bartenders Association. So there's a little bit of legitimacy to what we're doing.
Oh yeah.
And we make drinks like a Tom Collins, a tequila sunrise, a hot toddy, a bunch of stuff that you can make with stuff you got lying around. And then there's also some crazier shit like a zombie or a Mai Tai, which is, like 8 or 9 tiki ingredients.
One thing I love about that, though, is that on some of the social media platforms, you guys have also been like, hey, if you don't have all of these materials. Here's how you can kind of make like a dirty version of it where, you know, you can kind of sub in this stuff, or, you know, here's the sort of core ingredients that, you know, give you the idea of it. And I think that that's really great for sort of letting people participate and without having to be like, all right, I got to go out and get 20 million ingredients.
Right.
So.
I mean, if you follow us on social media at the Sloppy Boys, we release these recipes like a day in advance, but also, you know, like most podcasts, it's just a stimulator to get conversation going. We don't really, I mean, hopefully if people don't drink, the podcast isn't too triggering and they can still have a laugh.
Hell yeah.
That's the idea anyway. And then on the Patreon side of things, we also have a weekly show called The Sloppy Boys Blowout, which is not podcast related. And it's just, you know, we talk about movies and music and whatever else.
I said it before, I can't recommend The Sloppy Boys, The Birthday Boys, everything that Jeff has got going on. I love it. So
thanks, George.
Definitely check all that stuff out. As far as my plugs, you can find me at Little Horror PHL. My personal account is currently suspended for telling a TERF to hurry up and die.
Yeah, George, I love it.
So just follow me at Little Horror PHL, and we're also on Patreon if you decide that you just gotta have more Little Horror PHL. We got bonus episodes, early and ad-free episodes. We're doing fun stuff like riff tracks style commentaries and all kinds of good stuff. So
that's cool.
Check that out. That's pretty much it for me. Jeff, thanks again, man. This was so much fun. And everyone out there, go check out Re-Animator. Bye.
Bye.